On his latest installment of Locked On Texans, is it fair to say the Houston Texans roster is complete?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to this Thursday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I almost forgot what day it was. Tell you guys. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and much more. Thank you to all of our returning listeners coming back to continue to watch or view or listen to Cody and myself here on the Locked On Texans podcast. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen is Texans credential media member, Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Thursday. Cody, take it away.
And on today's installment of Locked On Texans, John and myself will be looking at, is the Houston Texans roster complete? And for the positions that we think the Texans can still use just a smidgen of an upgrade, we will be looking at some available candidates at each position. And then with today being Thursday, which means it marks the second day for the media to attend OTAs for the Houston Texans. So we're going to do a little quick preview, revisiting what took place on last week and what are some of the things that John and myself will be looking forward to on today. But John, ladies and gentlemen, as I alluded to, we got to talk about the Houston Texans roster because, look, we are all excited about the addition that Nick Caserio and head coach D'Amico Ryans had an opportunity to bring in throughout the whole entire offseason. John, I think this is the perfect opportunity to look at the Houston Texans roster as a whole and literally see whether or not this roster is complete. Now, I'm going to start with the easy one first. If we take a look at the offensive side of the ball, we take a look at the players that they added. And for those of you guys who don't know, I decided to circle the guys who are rookies as of right now. But when you take a look at the Houston Texans roster on the offensive side of the ball, John, I do believe that is set there. You already have your franchise quarterback. You already know who your running back one is going to be. Look, and given how things looked last week at OTAs, I think it's fair to say that right now, and look, Coach D'Amico Ryans did say that you're not going to find nobody winning a particular job this early in OTAs, but Damian Pierce, I would believe, is running back number 2, as I mentioned, with Nico Collins agreeing to his contract extension. That wide receiving core is definitely set. You already know, headlined by Dalton Schultz, who is going to be at tight end. You already have your fullback situation taken care of, which, by the way, we did have an opportunity to see Troy Harrison back in action last week. And, of course, you got your big guys up front. You already know who your projected starting 5 is going to be. Even when you have your concerns about Kenyon Green, is still basically solid at that position right now. So, John, I am okay as to what the Houston Texans are working with on the offensive side of the ball as of right now.
Offensively, for me, if you can put that graphic back up.
It's going to be a graphic show, by the way.
Right. And not that type of graphic show, not HBO After Dark graphic show. Although Cody and myself, we are recording pretty late right now. But I do think that offensively, everything is set. My question mark in terms of, like, is it the final roster? There's one position that I could see Houston, actually 2, and it comes in the backfield, running back and fullback. Andrew Beck, Troy Harrison. You know, what does that look like? Does Brevin Jordan take a full-time role as fullback? Tegan Quatoriano, do they look to utilize? Because in the red zone, what is he, 6'6", 6'7"? He's a big target in the red zone. Maybe a guy that you want to keep around. I can see fullback being up for grabs. I think between fullback and running back, what we will see is maybe there's a guy on the roster that could either A, bump the guy that's in front of them out of the way, or B, maybe the guy that's starting, i.e. Damian Pierce or Andrew Beck, is just completely flat out better than the competition that could potentially take over. But I could see Houston waiting until and I've said this a lot, at the end of cut down day, right before the season starts, depending on what they got out of Damian Pierce during training camp, during preseason, I can see Houston looking to upgrade the running back room. I also can see Houston making moves at that fullback position to where maybe they keep a traditional fullback. So this doesn't necessarily speak to is the roster complete, but maybe I'm kind of looking way ahead. They keep a traditional fullback, but they look to utilize one of those tight ends in that role as well. But offensively, I do think running back is probably the position of all of the positions on the offensive side of the ball where they will look to make a move right before the season starts. I think receiver is set. Whether you don't get anything out of Noah Brown and Robert Woods, you still got guys like John Mechie, Jared Wayne, Xavier Hutchinson, the Yankee twins. Maybe one of those players make the roster. So I think that room is so filled right now that if you drop off with two of them, you got another couple of guys, though they are young, that you would want to see step up. It's defensively where I think, okay, is this roster complete? Cody put the graphic back up. So if you guys are listening, not watching, again, rookies Marcus Harris, Solomon Byrd, Jamal Hill, Kamari Lassiter, Kalen Bullock. As of right now, none of those rookies have a starting role on the depth chart, according to ESPN. Now, where do I think the roster may or may not be complete at? D-tackle. No doubt about it. I can go safety, right? I could go cornerback. But if I'm looking at how D'Amico Ryan's defenses has looked last year, his time in San Francisco, the one thing that has consistently stood out is they are causing pressure up front often and consistently throughout 17 games. And yes, Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, Danico Autry, no doubt about it. Those three are studs. But as of right now, your other D tackle could either be Folu Fatukauzi, Khalil Davis, Tim Settle. How does that look? Tim Settle, Khalil Davis. I would love to see Khalil Davis take that next step. And if he does, boy, would I be happy. But realistically, right now, I could see Houston making a move and maybe upgrading that position and then second in line because of where Jimmy Ward looked last year at the end of the year. Jalen Petrie, I think he'll return back to somewhat of his form, but Jalen Petrie is in that Damian Pierce boat. Offseason is important. Preseason is important. Training camp is important. Because you're looking at a team with nearly $18 million at the end of the preseason period when they could do the major cut down day. Who's still available? Diggs still available? Is Simmons still available? They got a 3-year window. We talked about all those 3-year deals. They have a 3-year window when they want to get a championship in the city. I don't think they're going to hold off on that window because of feelings from players that they already have on the roster. They'll make an upgrade if they need to. I think a lot of that in terms of completing this roster, we may see moves in between preseason in the preseason time.
For me, I think the biggest hole as of right now, and I'm going back to what we saw at OTAs on last week, is second string corner or cornerback number 2, if I could put it correctly, because, look, I'm real big on Kamari Lassiter, and you guys, if you didn't have an opportunity to do so, please be sure to check out Monday's installment of Locked On Texans. Had an opportunity to sit down one-on-one with former Georgia, now Syracuse head coach Fran Brown, and, got a realistic view on what type of player the Houston Texans will get out of Kamari Lassiter. However, Johnny, you heard me say this a lot on this show, knowing that the Houston Texans are now in championship contention, knowing that they are definitely going to try to put themselves in a position to win. I'm not saying that Kamari Lassiter is not going to have an important role for this organization as of right now, but I look at it from a standpoint, they will definitely need to make sure that they add more experience to that position. Look, for what I saw last week, CJ Henderson and Jeff Okudah, as of right now, they just not going to have an opportunity to cut it. Now, look, that could change later on today. If I go out there and see them, holding their own against Tank Dell, holding their own against Nico, holding their own against John Mechie, hopefully holding their own against Stephon Diggs. Hopefully we get an opportunity to finally see him. That can change, but I just go back to something that Coach DeMeco Ryans has been saying throughout this whole entire offseason in terms of why the Houston Texans put so much emphasis on improving the defense. That's because you're playing against some of, if not the best quarterbacks that this league has to offer with the schedule that you have. Plus, once you make the playoffs, you're going to see majority of those quarterbacks again at some point, i.e. Lamar Jackson, who knocked you out in the playoffs last year. Patrick Mahomes, who, look, if you are talking about championship contention, in order to be the best, you're going to have to beat the best. And you're definitely going to have a date with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City at some point. That's going to be very important because, John, as of right now, like I just alluded to, when I just look at who's going to start opposite of Derek Stingley, it's still questionable and it's still a little bit concerning. So when I look at this roster once again, man, I think they're set with their front four. The linebacker unit, I think that Henry T is definitely going to have an opportunity to take that step that we want to see. When I take a look at the defensive backfield, I think Jalen Petrie is going to have a better season. Last week, we talked about what he talked about in terms of ways he can improve going into year 3. And the biggest thing that he said was he just needs to take a step back and calm down and control his aggression. Look, Jimmy Ward, we saw some flashes out of him. However, he just needs to stay healthy. Plus, I also have some faith in someone like MJ Stewart and Eric Murray, who held their own before they went down with their respective injuries. Like, I'm set on the defensive side of the ball, except for finding a cornerback number 2, man. And look, once again, I know it's early, but from what I saw last week, CJ and Jeff may not cut
it. It may not cut it. Now we're going to look at the best available options for Houston. Don't go anywhere. Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. More Texans talk on the other side. Game time. Listen, Game Time makes getting NBA tickets, and now with the finals around the corner, faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee. Let me tell you what Game Time does, guys. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets and NFL tickets and NHL tickets and MLB tickets. You ain't got to guess no more. You ain't got to guess about how I'm going to pay this, or if I have to miss it, will I be able to get my money back? Now, you ain't got to guess with that Game Time ticket coverage. Let me tell you something. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Also, if you find that same ticket somewhere else cheaper with their lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Thursday installment of Locked On Texans. So, the great, I guess we could call him the great now. I mean, the man been cooking over the last year or so, and that's General Manager Nick Caserio. And look, even though they have spent some very good money this offseason, The Texans, as of right now, according to Texans Cap, one of the best followers on Twitter, if you're a Texans fan, reported on yesterday that the Texans have roughly around 18 to 19 million still available, which is fairly good. Once again, especially when considering that the amount of money that the Houston Texans have spent at upgrading their roster.
Yeah.
So with 18 million to spend, John, we in the first segment talked about positions that we might have some concerns about. But if the Texans can address a need, I would love for them to explore the cornerback market just one more time, because I think the cornerback market does have a handful of players that they can actually utilize if given an opportunity. With Darius Stingley Jr., yes, majority of these guys that you're looking at on the market as of right now, like a Patrick Peterson, like a Xavier Howard, yes, they are past their primes. However, I do believe if you are able to sign them to, of course, a very affordable contract, I think either one of those guys can step in and help give the Houston Texans cornerback room a major boost that they would definitely need. Because, John, I'm looking at it from a situation, if you get one of those guys, more so in my opinion, and Xavier Howard, is going to give you not only a cornerback you can trust to take the helm as CB2, but if Xavier is able to stay healthy, and as of right now, that has been one of, if not the major knock against him over the last couple of seasons, was his inability to stay healthy. But you bring him to the city of Houston, you lower his responsibility, you, of course, monitor his snap counts throughout the regular season. By the time you get to the playoffs, somebody who has played some very valuable football throughout his whole entire career and who was once considered one of the top cornerbacks in the game, if you have an opportunity to bring somebody like Xavier Howard in to help boost your cornerback room, I say do it. Why not? You literally have nothing to lose, because first and foremost, I think the potential addition of Howard can – it definitely won't hurt your cornerback room, but more so it's going to improve it, especially when you get late in the season and in the playoffs when you have to go up against some of the league's top quarterbacks in order to get hopefully your first Vince Lombardi trophy.
Yeah, man. I'm not mad at that. But for me, I'm not a guy that's going to undervalue the safety position. And
so you're still going safety?
Still going safety in terms of best available options. Mm-hmm. You can't sit there and tell me. And by the way, I'm gonna ask you guys, Cody, how do you feel about Jamal Adams?
No.
First of all, no. I'm not advocating for Jamal Adams.
I was about to say.
No. I would rather stick it out with Jalen Petrie. I think may have a higher upside. Mm-hmm. But I still look at Justin Simmons, Quandre Diggs, even if you want to throw Eddie Jackson in there for depth purposes. Those are two players that I think in Justin Simmons and Quandre, both over 30 years old, right? I understand that. Both have been successful safeties in the NFL. Both have played on damn good defenses, and both have done a very good job of making sure that they limit big plays throughout their career on the back end of the defense. So I think for me, man, again, it's going to be out of one of those two. I haven't had an opportunity to go through the available linebackers. Mm-hmm. And again, there may be guys available now that could fit Houston, but I'm really looking forward to after the cut down day, there are going to be vets out there that just, may sit down with the front office and say, hey, listen, the direction you guys are going in right now may not be for me. Would you mind if you release me and I can go to a contender? And I think it would be fair to call Houston a potential contender.
No, they contended.
But you can say that, but you got a head coach in D'Amico Ryans that outside of Steven Nelson, everybody else may like. You got a quarterback in CJ Stroud everybody likes. You got, Tank Dell, Nico. They got the pieces here. So we can see Houston saying, listen, we're going to make some upgrades after other guys are let go from their current situations, and we may see them bring in some vets. Between safety, Cody, you said corner, and I still got D tackle. I'm interested to see how Houston attacks that. But overall, for me, it's going to be safety, and I think that Quandre Diggs, and Justin Simmons are the two best options.
Really quick, you say a linebacker.
I got to go look and see who's available, in fairness.
No, you ain't got to look. I can tell you who's the best available. Shaq Leonard.
He is available.
He's available. And
y'all don't want no Zach Cunningham.
Hey, you know what?
Y'all don't want no Zach Cunningham reunion.
I got to remember, Locked On is PG. You almost made me say something. But when I look at somebody like Shaq Leonard, I look at him just like how I look at Xavier Howard. Someone who, of course, past his prime, in his 30s. However, last couple of years, unfortunately, injuries has derailed his career. If you bring him in, of course, it's going to be on an affordable deal. You're going to add him to a position where his acquisition definitely is not going to hurt. If anything, it's just going to improve it even more. And not only that, just like everything that I said about Xavier Howard, if you have an opportunity to bring him in, he's not going to have the same responsibility that he had in Indy a couple years back. You can monitor his snaps, monitor his play time, kind of keep him on, some type of, I don't want to say limited snaps, but use him on situational purposes. So when you get towards the end of the season, when you're fighting for a playoff positioning, or if you are in a position in the playoffs where you're going up against some of the best offenses in the game, i.e. the Baltimore Ravens and Kansas City. And the reason why I keep saying those two teams, because those are the two teams I think the Houston Texans will definitely have to beat in order to get to where they want to go. He's going to be somebody that's going to be very valuable, not just due to his talents alone when healthy, but also he's going to have that experience. Last year, between his time in Indianapolis and Philadelphia, he had an opportunity to go out there and record 88 tackles. Once again, I know that's not the Leonard that we used to fear when he was in his heyday in Indianapolis. But if you add him to Houston Texans linebacking core, to look, like we have said over the last couple of weeks, you already know who your main two linebackers is going to be. But who's going to be that third guy that you're going to depend on? We are all hoping it's Henry T. But even if it is Henry T, there is nothing wrong with the Houston Texans still adding a solid veteran to this organization in order for them to get to where they want to get to.
Yeah. I do worry with Shaq Leonard. Is it more so name now than actual play? There was a decline in play in Shaquille Leonard last year. He was coming off an injury. But what I would say is I would love to see him under D'Amico in a minimized role. Because Houston has their two starters. And one thing I know Houston wants to continually get better at, because they were so bad at it for a handful of years, is stopping the run. So I think I could be wrong on this. I think Leonard right now may be more of a liability in terms of pass coverage, but maybe he can help Houston out and stop the run. I'm not sure. OTA preview for week 2. Oh, yeah, don't go nowhere. More Locked On Texans.
Before we close out this Thursday installment of Locked On Texans, by the time some of you guys hear this, we will be on our way to NRG Stadium, probably at NRG Stadium, or just not leaving NRG Stadium, because the Houston Texans will allow Houston media to attend OTAs for the first time this week. Of course, last week we had an opportunity to be there. And John, really quick for me, some of the things I'm going to keep an eye out on today is going to be, of course, better cornerback play from both CJ Henderson and Jeff Okudah. I know I've been kind of hard on them in this episode. However, once again, I just look at it from a standpoint that the Houston Texans definitely need to make sure that they have every position set in order to be the team that we are all hoping and expecting them to be. And, I just feel like as of right now, that is just a weak link CB number 2. Now, maybe later on today, we'll have an opportunity to see Kamari Lassiter get some runs with the first team. If I can see Kamari Lassiter, holding his own against a Tank Dell, a Nico, possibly getting a pass deflection from a pass attempt thrown by CJ Stroud, then forget everything that I just said. Kamari Lassiter, you're going to be CB2. But, of course, better CB play. And because we didn't have a real opportunity to see him in action when they go 11 on 11, and yes, it's still going to be non-contact, but you still got to give the offensive line and the defensive line some reps, man. I'm hoping to get a real good look at Kenyon Green. You guys remember, I'm pretty sure you guys heard, Kenyon Green looked fit last week. He looked really good in shape. He just looked good. And I just want to see him, you know, even if it's just for one snap, I just want to see him literally in action to see what has officially improved in his game. Also, I do want to mention, I do want to see Dameon Pierce in action as well. Kind of more so getting more burn with the first team. Not saying that he's going to compete for a starter, but, you know, just seeing what does he look like going up against somewhat better competition.
Thank you guys for watching and listening to today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Give me a follow on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.